Hi, I'm Chloe Canning. Welcome back for Season 2 on Lead with Courage. Luminate Leadership acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land, which we would call this podcast the Yagara and Terrible people. We pay respect to the elders past, present and emerging.
Welcome to Lead with Courage, the podcast that celebrates the bold and inspiring stories of leaders making a difference. We're your hosts, Andy and Cherie Canning, and together we'll dive into the minds of the trailblazers, the risk takers, and those who embrace life with a growth mindset.
Well, hi everybody. You've got Andy here. Haven't heard my voice in a little while on this thing, so I'm going to take these 10 seconds and just run with it. And every episode we say is a bit different, but I guess in reality, this one is somewhat autobiographical in terms of, for those listeners that have kind of tuned in along the way, they would know that I had a bit of a big, hairy, audacious goal, a BHAG, that it is to run a marathon. And today we're here to talk about that, to kind of debrief. And we have wonderful co-hosts across from me. We have Cherie, who... no stranger to this podcast.
But also am a stranger to running. So running is not my forte. So we thought we'd pull in some big guns to have part of this conversation.
We definitely need some big guns. And can we get a shout out to Ali Ma, 14
full marathons this woman has run.
14 full marathons.
8 of them have actually been part of Ironman. So what do you throw into the Ironman? A 130k ride?
180k ride. Hi everyone.
Oh, welcome. Just this incredible human, Ali. So she was, you might have heard Ali's episode on our podcast before. And yes, 14 marathons, 8 Ironmans, and she's here to have the conversation with us. Ali, you've been part of this journey for a while now.
Yes. So thanks Andy and Cherie for having me today. I'm super stoked to host my first podcast and
welcome.
Yes, and hear about the journey that it was to get to the start line of a marathon. And we'll hopefully hear about how that went. So
Thank you. Oh, thanks so much for coming on. I couldn't think of anyone more fitting because, you know, in a lot of ways, kind of like deciding to have the goal and commit to it came in large by a conversation that you and I had and 3 of us had in this room about 12 months ago. And it was one of my most popular podcasts ever that we put out was yours about meeting your edge and that kind of thing. So couldn't think of anyone better, and so grateful you could give us a minute or two to chat. So thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Thanks.
So before we kick off, we're going to talk a bit about the running journey, but hold the phone. I have to bring up something here. So at the start of the marathon, we're going to talk about the journey to get there, but I got a message from Cherie. At the start of the marathon, would have been 5Ks in, and it was something we've called it Nipplegate, okay? Guys, that's the preface.
Definitely Nipplegate.
So Andy's had an incident. Something to do, you would think in a marathon, it's something to do with, you know, calf or hammy, it's something, but no. Cherie, do you want to talk us through what happened? What message did I get? But seriously, I get a message, Andy's going great, but we've had to get some extra tape for the nipples.
Extra nipple tape, yes. I'm sure it's not the first runner to have it.
So the first time you've been sent nipples?
I have, yeah.
Okay.
I haven't. I'll have to scroll my phone, but yes, definitely the first time I've been sent nipples. But look, I know there's some less glamorous parts of running, and I think that one there is certainly one of those. And I don't know if you want to kick off with your running journey, but I'm sure you've learned a few less glamorous things along the way, apart from Nipplegate.
Yeah. Geez, haven't I what? And running's a bit of a weird one. Like I ran quite a lot in high school and I really loved it. And then I think then fast forward 20 years and I honestly didn't think about running at all. And then it wasn't until somewhere about 2 years ago, I remember quite vividly, for 3 nights in a row, I had 3 dreams, which were the same dream every night, that I went running and I loved it. And I kind of, it was so weird. So not something I was thinking of, but maybe something my subconscious was trying to tell me. And and then I did what, you know, a lot of good people do in those moments, and did absolutely nothing about it for about 7 or 8 months. And then I remember until kind of like one steamy, hot, humid January night, and I was like, I'm going to go for a run just across the road there at Riding Road Park. And I went for a run. I think I made it like 1.5 times around the path, which is, you know, almost like 1.3 Ks, something like that. And I remember thinking so many times through then that this is like just the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And in a way, I remember the beginning of your story, Ali, when you were talking like the first time you went for a run like that. That
it was horrendous.
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether it's that first K or that first 5 Ks or that first 10 Ks. Like there are just moments throughout that you just absolutely like, this is just the worst decision I've ever made. What am I doing? And I absolutely felt like that.
It's the overcoming process that you go through.
Yeah, it is, and the confidence along the way that maybe you can build. So really, then for the next 6 months, it was the next 6 months or so, I ran periodically. So eventually, I remember I got up to. I remember when I ran 2Ks, it was like, oh, cool, that feels like something. And then I remember when I ran 5Ks. When I finished, I remember getting to my letterbox kind of up there and at home, and I remember just kind of tears in the eyes, like hands in the air, just feeling like I just accomplished something that I've never done before.
Awesome.
And then when I got to 10Ks, I remember it was quite similar. And then from there, I think it was just a process of maybe building a bit of confidence. But what I noticed over time is that my desire or appetite, I guess, I was getting more and more curious for people who were running marathons. Some of my friends had run marathons. I'd begun to meet some people who had talked about running marathons or had actually run marathons. And I noticed that I was just getting more and more interested along the way. And it was kind of lighting, unbeknownst to me, I guess, how I operate at the time. It was really just curiosity kind of killed the cat. And then over time it would sort of just like, okay, well, where does the tipping point kind of come from curiosity? So,
yeah, and I recall we had a lot of different conversations on the podcast with different people, a lot of high-performing people, many who had run marathons. And I remember at some stage asking you, oh, are you going to commit? And there was a lot of, So then when did you actually commit, Andy?
It was on the 13th of September 2023. We had a meeting.
Very specific.
I went through my calendar today to actually find this date.
I just want to check on something. Did you commit just so you didn't have to mow the lawn on a Sunday? Because, no. I hear this a lot. It's better than getting out and mowing the lawn on a Sunday. So, no, carry on, Andy. You remember when?
Oh, my Sundays are usually playing golf, and it's not a great trade-off for the golf game.
True, okay, yeah. You didn't get out anything.
But equally, you should see our backyard and you'd know there's not a huge amount of lawn to mow, so that wouldn't be a valid excuse, I don't think. But it was actually... we had a meeting with you, as you know, you're our tax accountant and advisor, and a very good one, so thank you. And we were in here to talk about that, and I remember towards the back end of that meeting, we were we then just got talking about more fun stuff and marathon, and I
love that you think it's fun.
Fun for me. Fun for those out there.
The whole conversation was fun for me, but the end was fun for Andy.
Yes. And I just remember I'm like, okay, so I've done 10Ks a couple of times now, and I'm thinking I can like do this, and then for whatever reason we then got talking about marathons, and I remember you said, Ali, you said to me kind of like, oh, so you're actually going to do it? And I'm like, yep. And kind of like with bated breath.
Put you on the spot.
Really put me on the spot, and that was the first time I remember saying it out loud and not quite sure that I meant it, but I said it out loud. So there you go, nearly a year to the day, 13th of September, 2023. Awesome. So there you go.
Thank you, Ali.
And a big gulp afterwards. Yep.
Now I've got to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you committed to it then, and then what happened after that point? Was it a race that you set in place to do, or, did you start training a bit more? What was the next steps, I guess, in the process to get you, going after the marathon?
So I noticed, similarly to the 3 weird dreams 3 nights in a row and going running, I didn't do a whole lot about it for a little while. I kind of just kept kind of going for the odd, it's a Wednesday morning, I should go for a run kind of, and then just go for a run, but with a lack of intent along the way. But I guess unbeknownst to me, what was happening at the time is I think I was just building like a little bit of confidence in the background, as there's so much of the journey, I think, for running is sort of building kind of confidence and capability. Like the more you run, the fitter you get. And then it also just creates, I guess, memories, and they're largely good memories in the bank that you can do whatever this is. And then they stack over time. They basically... I don't know, I think of it like a bar graph. I guess they continually stack over time, and then because of that, they sort of fill that void there. So what I noticed was then really some of the motivation, I guess, behind it. And it wasn't really until about 3 or 4 months after that I got kind of serious about it. I remember booking then the Gold Coast Marathon, but then something happened and I couldn't do that. Initially, there was some work stuff, and then I booked the Brisbane one. I thought, well, that's kind of cool. I'll just drive like 10 minutes to get a cab. Yeah, early June. You know that one. You might have done a half there.
Yeah.
Once or twice. And yeah, so booked that one, and I'm like, great, June it is, and then. What happened was I went to, we kind of had a bit of a Christmas holiday. I remember in Bali, I think we were in early January.
Yes.
And then maybe just with a bit of space and a little bit of kind of like, okay, well, probably need to get serious about this marathon now. So how is this actually going to take place? And I sort of entered, I guess, what I would call like my first training block. And every morning in Bali, I think I would... get up and I did maybe 8 out of the 10 mornings. So I would get up and go for a run. It would go between 4 and 7 Ks. It would be, anyone who's been to Southeast Asia, you know exactly what it's like.
Yeah,
It's
humidity.
It's hot. It's humid. The air's super thick. It's really sunny as well that time of year. And because of that, I figured that was a good place to do it, because I was just going to have to come back into a Brisbane summer and kind of do it anyway.
Yep,
so that gave me a bit of a runway to sort of begin looking at what that's like. In fact, I think at one point I remember texting you, Ali, while I was running, and I said something like, I've done 26 Ks. 26 Ks in Bali.
I remember this. And Ali was so proud of you about your 26 Ks.
Yeah.
Andy, was it all in one go?
No, it wasn't all in one go.
I feel like I deflated you that day. I did not mean to at all. When you messaged me, I've done 26 Ks, and I was like, oh, wow, like your marathon's not for another 4 months or something. Like I was just like blown away. You've gone from, this to this. But yeah, I mean, the 26 Ks was awesome.
26 in the legs, just not in one go.
Yeah, it was 26 more than I'd done before consecutively and continuously.
Yes.
And that felt like a good starting point. And then I think what happened then, I kind of came back and then I remember pretty diligently for about 2 months in running, the better part of 5 times a week, getting up to sort of that 30, 40, 50K mark.
Per week.
Collectively, per week, not in one sitting. Doing that every morning, every week. And then from there, we actually then kind of went on a pretty big trip. So then there wasn't a huge amount of running after that. But I think what that did, that block from January through March, marathon wasn't until June. It built fitness. It definitely built fitness, and it built confidence along the way, but then it also built that discipline. And that's the part that I was really missing, I think, previously when it came to
the discipline,
the intensity, and that largely goes back to I think I mentioned before about the motivation behind running a marathon. Like that largely went back to kind of that point where it sort of felt like, I remember hearing something like 1% of the world will run a marathon. I'm like, well, that sounds like a pretty cool club to be a part of. So maybe I'd like to join that club.
Cool.
And then I guess sitting across here from my wife, who could probably attest to this, that I have had a pretty poor track record in my life of finishing things and not seeing them through.
Okay.
And a marathon seemed like a pretty big thing where I would need to provide quite a lot of routine in my life. I would need to provide a decent amount of structure. I would need to learn how to prepare and how to recover and not half-ass it. It's not the kind of thing you can half-ass.
It's certainly not. No, for sure.
And so...
That consistent discipline, not in spurts. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the consistent discipline and not in spurts. And I'm absolutely the king of spurts. Like,
you can do something, and a lot of people do that, New Year's resolutions, anything like that. You can commit to something for a small period of time, but to run a marathon, it can't be just a small period of time. You don't get fit enough over a week or, a month or whatever. So, it takes those months of the consistency, the confidence building to get there. So, so you needed that.
and
you got that in the first training block, but you didn't have a coach, right? So you just set your own plan. You did your own discipline. I think there's something that's also being quite disciplined as well, because sometimes when you've got a coach, it's a bit easier to someone's just telling me what to do. But Andy's thinking about this and going after it himself. I think that's even harder. So, so hats off, I think that's really a really big achievement as well, just to sort of set your own standard, I guess.
Oh, thank you. I think I'm much more comfortable, I think, when it comes to myself in setting a goal or doing it that way. I look at sports that I've played kind of growing up, I guess, and I played tennis. It's quite an individual sport. I played a lot of golf, pretty individual sport. I played a bit of cricket, but not for long, and that's probably the only team sport that I played. And so when it came to running, I do hear that people have run clubs that they go to, or, you can run as I remember going to see a physio at one point during this journey, and that physio belonged to, it was Peak Physio down the road, and then they, kind of have tents all around the place at the different marathons, kind of around Brisbane and Sunshine Coast, Gold Coast. And I remember whenever I saw that, it kind of terrified me, because the idea of I'm not a great runner at the best of times, let alone the idea of having to run and maybe forcibly talk to someone next to me was just kind of terrifying. So I kind of like to be in my own bubble attached to it. And I sort of, to an extent, maybe some stubbornness, but I wanted to sort of figure it out for myself. And then I felt like then there'd be no excuses, and then I could kind of build what I had to build. So
you mentioned the physio there. So do you want to just talk about what, I guess, did you have any setbacks along the way? Did you have, some injuries or some things that came up that potentially, threw a few spanners in the works?
Yes. Absolutely I did. It was really in the probably in the second training block, I think, in that April.
After that, we were away for 3.5 weeks on holiday. So
we were.
That discipline, whilst there wasn't a lot of alcohol, a little bit of alcohol, so that we hadn't been drinking for months. So I think that was good from a fitness and health discipline since January. But we did have 3.5 weeks in South America and Central America. So it's just so different. Not a lot of running.
No, I ran once.
Lots of walking and activity,
hiking,
but not
and
a lot
stuff,
of
lots of hiking, but no
running.
Cardio. I remember I ran once at altitude in Costa Rica. It was like 2,000 meters above sea level, and I never run at altitude before.
It's brutal.
I think the closest I come is maybe the hill at Bulimba. It's like maybe 23 meters above sea level or something like that.
Really big.
We've got a bit of below sea level around here, right?
We certainly do. Shout out to the floods. But that was it for 3 weeks. It was just that one time running, and then I came back, and what I noticed is that by that stage, I think I'd hoped that my body would take a bit of a break, as it was kind of getting to the point where it was pretty sore every morning, and it would, kind of like I would feel it in my Achilles, I would feel it in my calf muscles, so just really sore, really tight, and kind of looking like an old man down the stairs. I'm walking down the stairs, I'm grabbing every railing that I can, I'm trying not to bend my legs or straighten them.
Stiff and tense.
So stiff and tender, so more than anything, I kind of, to an extent, I felt like I could just, it's just like a bit of pain in the morning, and then I'll warm up as the day goes on, and I felt like I could kind of push through. But I was curious to know what was happening or what was wrong. In the same way, the curiosity kind of drove me to, I think, want to enter a training block and want to commit to a marathon to begin with. It drove me to, it drove me to kind of go to the physio and actually work out, okay, what's happening with my body here. And from there, a little bit of knowledge is quite dangerous, because in a way, that first 3 months, ignorance was bliss. It was like, I'm a bit sore, I'll just keep running.
Keep running through it.
There's no sweat. And then you go physio, they're like, well, what kind of strength training are you doing? And I'm like, I don't do any of that. I just roll out of bed and go for a run. It's
That's
like,
what happens when you don't have a coach.
Yeah, that's it. That's the other flip side of not having a coach.
And also,
it's
I
like,
feel if you're sub 30, years of age, you can get away with a lot more. Not saying that any you're entering that peak.
Well, you're 40 next year, so you've got
You know
a
what I
couple
mean?
of
You
years
start to feel the things that you didn't feel when you were in your 20s, and you're
Totally.
like, oh, body's not absolutely indestructible.
yes,
You need to do a few
just
things.
a wee bit. Yeah, and I think once I embrace that, getting great feedback from a couple of physios along the way that I ended up working with it was like, okay, so I had some Achilles issues, and it was on my left side. It's like an Achilles tendonitis, basically tendinopathy, and then it was also some plantar fascia issues on the bottom of my foot as well. And they were the main things that were kind of keeping me up at night. But little did I know, they didn't really get better. They're still not better, but they didn't really get any worse, and they were manageable. So I kind of just sucked it up a little bit and carried on. But then I started to get other issues.
This ITB, did you get
ITB, yeah.
You've pretty much had all the key runners. I'm not laughing because, but in your first or second training block, they're the big ones, the Achilles, the plantar fascia and the ITB.
Yeah.
Apart from runner's knee, I think you pretty much had the the three key sort of injuries that you get when you start loading up the Ks. And you had them all at once. So that would have been pretty tough too. So
it was good fun. It was good fun. Look, I think so much of it for me was just learning about my body, and learning about what preparation and recovery looked like. And up to that point, that, as I said, that ignorance is bliss piece, and through January through March was just very much like running the same sort of 5, 10 or 20K circuit in and around the area, not with a huge amount of variety, just seeking out a hill every now and then to test myself on it. But I would have no nutrition before I went. I would have little to no water, or if any, during the whole time itself. I remember one day going for a run when it was super humid in the middle of March, and it was the first time that I did sort of 21Ks, and I remember stopping at a service station at about the 13K mark. I'd thrown away my singlet. It was soaked, and I'm just running around with my dad bod. And kind of...
You're welcome, Belinda.
Yeah, that's it. I just remember walking past all the ladies wearing, athleisure and walking their dogs, and they're just expecting probably to see someone looking a lot fitter than I do. Walk past them or run past them, but, and at that point I think they were probably walking faster than I was running anyway. So... But yeah, then I remember stopping at a service station, getting a Powerade, and allowing myself to have just 100 mils in my mouth every kilometre for the next 6 or 7 Ks.
Right.
And then that felt like that was the first time I discovered that actually having some electrolytes or having some water on a run might actually help.
Especially in Brisbane
in the middle of summer. So, so that was a good learning. And then after that, I'm like, I wonder what would happen if I actually had a banana before I went. that could be amazing. And then, I wonder what would happen. And then later on, it's like, I wonder what would happen if I would have a gel while I run. And then what could that look like? And
at one point in the training, I remember you saying, can you take this Powerade out to the mailbox at this time? Can you set an alarm? Because I'll be running past. I'll pick up some more water. I'll pick up more Powerade. Yeah, you got there with those little habits.
Yeah, lots of learnings along the way. Like the path, is not straight. Like a training plan, and it probably goes for life in general. Like a training plan looks really linear. It looks step by step. A training plan for a marathon looks like 20 Ks a week, 30 Ks a week. Do that a couple of times, build up to 40, build up to 50, do the sprints, do this, do that. But when you're 38 or 39 years old and you've got the dad bod and you're marching around Bulimba and it's super humid and you know nothing about nutrition and you're a horrible runner and you're not that fit, then turns out that it's really difficult to follow like a really, really linear plan, and you have to kind of adapt. And I think that's one thing that I noticed along the way, and the feedback that I was getting from the physios, that I was seeing was like, okay, well, you're just not strong enough. Like your glutes aren't strong enough. Your leg muscles aren't strong enough at all. And so then began a bit of a regime of doing a lot of strength building exercises. And then...
Yeah, and I think you had these setbacks and you had the injuries and those things, but you really must have had quite a burning desire to keep, for someone that self-professed says that they have trouble finishing things, a lot of people could have just thrown it out the window now and said, well, I've got ITB or plantar fasciitis or, a combination of 3, pretty solid injuries together. But you didn't do that. And I think that's a testament to actually really, maybe the dream you had, those sort of things. And I think you said, it must have been a sporting person in a previous life or something like that, because you do resonate with those things. So I think you did have that desire. And I think any goal, it's so important to go after things that you do have that burning desire for, because when you hit those setbacks or the speed bumps, then you can, adapt and overcome those things. But if you don't have that desire, then, you're going to let that fall by the wayside, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think looking back on it now, I think in that first section when I said it to you that day, and then it became pretty real after that, what I noticed that when I was running, I started to visualize, and I could visualize what it would feel like after I run up a hill. That sort of felt like at that point in time, that was like one of the hardest things. But then I could see what it was like to cross the finish line. And I remember running would really move me to quite a lot of emotion. And it felt like it was basically bubbling up maybe a lot of the shit that I've accumulated in life. That
we all got it.
All the negative stories that I might have told myself, or all the beliefs that I'd hung on to, which just like weren't the reality of the human that I am today. Running, for whatever reason, allowed me to meet my edge every single time that I put my shoes on, and every single time that I went for a run. It would stir up all kinds of emotions in me. And sometimes it would be music related that would be drumming into my ears, or sometimes I'd just be totally naked, kind of wearing clothes, but not
that was a real dad bod coming around.
Sorry, we never discussed that.
No.
That's illegal.
I only did that the once.
That's another podcast episode.
It is. And yeah, what I noticed is that it was just bringing up so much shit for my life, and it was incredibly motivating. It was incredibly motivating, and I think the thing that I was hanging on to the whole time is I just saw that goal of running a marathon, and I had a gut feeling the whole time that it wouldn't be the Brisbane one that I ended up doing, and a spoiler, or ended up at the start line of, and a spoiler alert, it wasn't the Brisbane one.
Yeah. So the injuries really took Brisbane off the table. Is that what happened there?
Yeah, that's right. I remember I went to beautiful physio, one of the great teachers along the way, a lady called Deshni, and I remember going in one night. I would go 5 o'clock every afternoon, every Friday, yeah. And by this stage, what my week looked like was going to the physio at 5 o'clock on a Friday. I'd be there for an hour while she puts like 7-inch needles into the bottom of my muscles. Like, shout out to understand what dry needling is versus acupuncture. It turns out I've never had dry needling before, so now I've had it and have it regularly. But it would be going there, and then I would be in quite a state for the next 2 days. Like, I'd barely be able to walk, let alone run. And then I kind of get to Sunday and I start to feel a little bit better. But then by Monday I go for a run, and then I'll be no good for another 2 days. And then I go for another run. And then by the time I see Deshni again on Friday, then I would just go through that same cycle again.
Yeah, okay.
And what I noticed is that my body would recover. Like I said, it got better with the needles and it got better with the recovery. But we were just in a triage situation. We were just in a treading water situation. We weren't in any kind of repair or looking for rebuild. And so I kind of had to modify the routine. But the goal of to run a marathon kept me anchored. But the date that I had to do it changed. And when the Brisbane one was kind of coming close, I just felt like in no way was I fit enough. In no way was I strong enough. And I had 2 goals. One of them was to cross the finish line, and the other one was to not die. And
I had it in the other.
You had it in the other way.
She wants her husband back.
Yeah. And what I noticed was that I just felt like I just wasn't quite there, and I guess I had to call it, and then try and find another one that I could anchor to. And I remember specifically coming home. It's one Friday night after physio. I was in a bit of a state. I was in a real state. I was couldn't bend my legs. I was like walking straight-legged into the house, and I walked in and I saw Chloe, kind of in front. You remember this
so clearly. So clearly, because you weren't in a good physical state, but you also, I think you, from my observation, you're at that point where you're like, I think I'm going to have to pull out.
Yeah.
And you were seeing it almost like I have to quit this goal because you couldn't actually walk. And I think this was the reality. It's like you can barely walk, Andy. Who do you think you are thinking you're going to run 42 Ks when you can't actually walk? And that was, for me, that was really frightening because I didn't want you to give this goal away, but also your body in those moments, I was sitting there going,
this might not happen.
This might not happen. And it's not through lack of trying. It's not through a lack of commitment. You're going to physio every single week and doing all the things you were told to do. But also if your body is just absolutely hard saying no, even for the training and the lead up, you can't ignore that. So I was really in a tricky position wanting to support you without being, focusing on the negative, but also, babe, like your body's not working. And Chloe had done some art at Osh, some afternoon.
Oh God! I walked in
care.
the door. I'd been crying, or I was about to cry. I can't remember that whole time. I feel like I was in tears for about a month. And I walked in the house, and I think I might have said to you simultaneously, or I just made a decision in the car that I think I can't make this Brisbane one.
I can't do this one.
And at the moment I walk in the house, Chloe just turns around and she's holding a sign. Dad, I made you a sign for your marathon.
Oh, go Dad, go Daddy.
And I remember I just burst into tears. I absolutely just burst into tears. I gave her a big cuddle. And I think what I noticed was that along the way, I had so many, to get to the start line of what ended up being the Sunshine Coast Marathon in August, I had so many wonderful teachers. And Chloe was one of them, and there were just kind of like those almost like divine intervention moments where you're literally on your knees. Like I kind of had nothing left to give that night in particular, and then I just remember thinking, I just can't let this little human down. And then there were also so many of those other people that I felt like I'd said and out loud, and people knew at work and people knew in my personal life that I was going to do this marathon. And there were a couple of people in my life that I just wanted to like stick a big fuck you to say that I can do the marathon. That was a huge motivator for me. Where they
go, so Andy, are you still going to be doing that marathon you signed up for? And you're like, yes, I am.
Yeah, they
so much conviction.
So much like it
they were waiting for you to say, nah. Yeah,
nah, because like I think that's largely how I'd made decisions for my life, and maybe they'd made some decisions for their life as well in that way.
A reflection on them.
Totally.
If you do something,
a bit too hard. Maybe it's just too hard.
Maybe it's just too hard.
Goal.
And I think that then I remember kind of giving it a couple of days. And then I think at that point, then I just basically did strength work in the gym and modified my training plan to be on the bike at the gym, and then just try and simulate like what a 10 or a 15K run would look like by doing sprints so I could improve my cardio. So I did that, and then I did the elliptical at the gym because that was both those things, the cross trainer and the bike, were taking a lot of the pressure off the ITB problems that I had from just kind of pounding the pavement. At this point as well, I sort of realised that I was totally an inefficient runner. Like I would land on my heels and then I would roll forward, and I would still kind of push off from my heels. I would run really upright as well. And so then I remember another teacher, just randomly, we were walking through the park one night, we saw Michelle, and Michelle was talking about kind of running, and one thing she'd heard before was how running is like falling forward while you're skipping. It was kind of her analogy, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should try and do that. And like, shout out to anyone who's ever tried to do that, because it doesn't look as good as it sounds. But that was a bit of a metaphor for me, I think, moving forward, where then I needed to feel like I was falling over, and if I was falling over, I was probably still way more upright than most people.
Yes.
But that was sort of one thing I kind of had to then save my Achilles and save my ITB a little bit by trying to land on the middle of my foot and then push off. And then this is that, to an extent, ignorance is bliss through that first training block where you don't know any of this stuff and you just run. But then as you begin to learn, then you begin to realise that maybe there are better ways to do things. And if I am ever going to make that start line, then I need to kind of reinvent what I'm doing a little bit, and then kind of just go from there. And so then, that's largely what I had to do. And then that 10 to 12 week block was still filled with lots of ups and downs and all kinds of stuff along the way. I kind of got to the point where I was, just having that physio once a week, running once or twice a week. I would do sort of 10 to 20 Ks, and that's as much as I felt like my body could do to be in a realistic triage mode without kind of over-indexing. And in no way does that match any training plan out there. And I don't think anyone will be calling me to teach them, to hold them to account for a training plan, because at the end of the day, I sort of felt like I had to listen to what my what my body was saying, and what my body was saying was that was max where it was
what
at.
You could do, yeah.
Yeah. So many things. I think the most weird injury I had was the neck. I had like a burning up the left-hand side of my neck.
Like a nerve type thing.
A nerve thing to my spine. And that was probably the most uncomfortable thing. Like I felt like the ITB and the Achilles, you could kind of, I guess, to an extent manage throughout. But the burning was just super uncomfortable. It's like see a runner kind of going along and just rapidly waving their left arm to try and get some movement kind of back in. And that's what it felt like it was for me. So...
Yeah, all the weird and wonderful things that you learn along the way.
Crazy, isn't it?
It is.
So many weird and wonderful things. I think the only other thing I'll say on that, apart from the teachers, I've mentioned a couple of them. Like you, absolutely were one of them, Ali. Like when I remember having just random conversations with you. I'm just getting a bit of calf pain or whatever, and you're like, reverse calf raises. Google what that is. Look it up on YouTube. I remember asking you about sunglasses. You're like, check out these ones. They're
I love
really
we said
good.
You didn't have a coach. You didn't have a formal coach. You had Ali and lots of others.
I had 6 others.
You know when you go, I didn't have the coach, but you did.
Yeah,
you did.
I mean, yeah, I think
not the training.
A lot of runners get those injuries, or you remember back in the day when you've had that, and just little things like that, and finding the things that work that you might need to do to just. It's just like oiling the car, right? Like you go, you need all these little things to keep it ticking along, right? So I feel like, you picked up all this knowledge along the way, and that, like you said, it's your teachers. But the teacher that I love the most that you talk about is Chloe, and bringing that sign in. And I think, I'm so excited to hear about her sign getting some use.
Yeah.
And, I think, just beautiful to hear that. I mean, you would have had a tough time going through all those injury setbacks, and then her just coming in and saying, Daddy, I've made this for you. You're like, oh, honey, how to shatter my heart into a million pieces.
Yeah, that lived on the fridge. It was a little A4 sign, and it lived on the fridge the whole time.
Yeah.
As well as our vision board. We have a vision board with just a few goals on there, and it said Brisbane Marathon. Then we crossed that out and just wrote marathon. But yeah, having that visual, and so many times we'd go to random places, random conversations, and Chloe would just say to people, my dad's doing a marathon. And she was so proud. And it would almost be, every time it happened, a time where you were probably in a bit of a low. Like it almost absolutely
the
happened
day
that
after
way.
the bad physio, bad state night and the sign night was we had netball the following morning. And I got talking to 2 of the dads there. And one of them's like, ran a marathon once. 10 years ago, hated it, never do it again. I'm like, well, you're in good shape. What do you do now? He goes, I just do ultra marathons. He just does 100-mile races twice a year. So he's
must have hated it too much.
Must have hated it too much.
Just 4 times the distance. Yeah. Oh, that's
so he did that. I remember talking to him once, and another guy, Jeff, as well as Henry and Jeff, and talking to Henry was just a godsend for me. Every Saturday, he'd be there every second Saturday morning, and every second Saturday morning I'd have a conversation with him about marathons or training or the mental game or what to expect. And he was such a great teacher. Like I remember he gave me 2 incredible, I didn't ask for the advice, but and he didn't provide the advice. It was just from conversations and little tidbits that you take away. But I remember he really said to me kind of one thing around the marathon itself. He's like, marathon's just like 4 or 5 hours of your life, right? And I'm like, yep. He's like, you go to work every day, you work 8 hours. It's like a marathon. Just turn up, just do 4 or 5 hours. Can't be that hard. You'll be fine. And it's like, oh, yeah, okay. all
You
right.
repeated that a lot. That really stuck with you.
Yeah, it did, because I think it helps make it real, you know, like because when you're in the pain cave and you're kind of suffering through something where all of your body is screaming at you, I think where people lose it is when perspective is lost. But if you can find that piece that kind of anchors you to the reality of what's happening, and then you can begin to see kind of like what the end game looks like, then all of a sudden maybe you don't lose perspective as much.
Yes.
And then you can kind of anchor yourself into what you're doing. And so on the long runs, I found it so useful. And then we'll talk about the marathon itself shortly in the start line and that sort of thing. But I found it so useful, and I'll come back to that. That anchoring piece. But the other thing Henry said was he's like, I'm like, what's the first thing you got to remember when you get to the start line? He's like, just leave your ego at the door. Doesn't belong here.
True,
Just
very
needs to
true.
stay behind. So kind of like what were your goals again? Cross the finish line, don't die. Just remember that. So there's going to be a lot of people that are looking like they're going to die at about the 30 to 40K mark.
And they've taken their ego and they've run with it at the start line.
Totally. They've gotten super excited. They've been first out the gate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing, a marathon, the race doesn't really start until you've been running for 3 hours, or, you know, like the real mental battle, and we can talk through that in a minute, but it's getting caught up in that starting piece with the ego, all that sort of stuff. And it's easy to run then. It's easy. It's excitement. There's lots of crowd around. You know, that's the bit there that you don't need anyone else to push you, but it's those later stages where you really need that discipline, the mental resilience, all that stuff that you've learnt in training really comes into play in the back half of the marathon that you needed to get through, right? So, yeah, he's 100% spot on. You just check that ego at the start line for sure.
Yeah, no place there.
No place there, not at all.
It's the one other teacher I kind of want to give a shout out to was a mum at school drop off one morning, Marina. I was talking to her. I think I was struggling it was dark in the morning, and I was struggling to kind of get up at 4 and go for a run because it was dark and cold, and my body, it just not, at that point I noticed that my body just doesn't warm up on a cold morning until like the 10K mark.
Yeah.
And by the 10K mark, it's like it's done. So, you know, it's then the run's over, and then I have to go get ready for the rest of my day. And I remember talking to her one morning, I'm like, I just finding it a bit tricky and, you know, whatever. And she's like,
motivated.
Yeah, she's like, don't get up and think, just run. Like, you don't need to get up and do a stock take on your life. Like, you just need to get up and put your shoes on and run. Like, don't overthink it. I'm okay, yep. And then I remember the next block that I entered was a little bit more like that. I didn't get up and do the thinking, but tried to talk myself out of it. I just kind of got up and did the running, and then that absolutely helped.
And you lay your clothes out the night before. You do make it easy for yourself just to get out the door. You're not thinking it's set in stone. You're going out to do this many Ks.
Yeah.
Because otherwise there's too many excuses not to go, right? It's
There's
cold.
so many excuses, so many reasons.
Sometimes it helped. I imagine, I'm putting words into your mouth, but I wonder, how did it help you when we talk about, what the plan was for the next day, so that, you know, I would try and get to Pilates at a certain time, and what time is Chloe's drop off, and when do I need to go to work? When do you need to go to work? So because we had to have that structure for everyone to be able to do everything in their morning. There was almost that commitment made, rather than, oh yeah, I should go for a run in the morning. It was really like, you're up at 4:30, you'll be running from this time to that time, then I'll go at this time. So there was really like set routine, which for us both hasn't been how we've always operated.
No.
It served us well though.
It served us very well. And I think it probably helped both of us. I think so.
Yeah, sometimes when you've got no other option,
Yeah.
if you've got the whole day to go and do something, sometimes you'll leave it to the last minute. But if you've got an hour and you've got to go then,
There's your window.
That's
Take it
your
or leave
window,
it.
take it or leave it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Totally powerful in that. Okay.
Anything else with your prep, Andy?
I think the only other thing I kind of mention is around what I learned. So there was the inefficiency of running style. I had to learn that. There was like the power of some version of nutrition in the race, and then keeping yourself hydrated along the way. I kind of had to learn both of those the hard way.
And Balimba Servo.
Yeah, Balimba Servo,
We
lemon,
have- shout
lemon
out.
Powerade.
We have purchased a lot of bags of ice from Balimba Servo as well.
Yeah, we
actually.
have. So that's one thing. One thing I've probably been experimenting with over the last 12 months is like cold therapy, like ice baths, and and then, sort of hot therapy like salt baths, for example. And so I noticed along the way it was probably less prevalent in that first training block because I kind of didn't need it as much. And then I noticed in the second one, then I really started to concentrate on that. So it would be go for a big run, have an ice bath. And so it'd be go down 4 or 5 bags of ice, put it in that little inflatable tub, and then it's ready, and it's sort of 2 degrees by the time I come back, and then I'll hop into that for 5 minutes. And then that, honestly, I think is one of the things that kind of kept me on my feet. Yeah, for the next 48 hours until I'd go through the process again, and then I'd sort of repeat it. Repeat it again, because then I'd be in a bit of a state otherwise. The salt baths definitely help for that as well. I probably learnt the power of recovery is almost more important than any kind of prep that I had to do for the day. It was about how I was going to recover. It was then going to dictate what the next 48 to 72 hours were going to look like, and factor that in as well, that I'm not going to get mad at myself if tomorrow that I get up and my body is my body's saying no. Like there's no medal to be won kind of in going for another run the day after a big run, to if your body's just not quite there, because the idea was that I just needed to carry it bandaged and all to that start line.
100%. Yeah, I think one thing I wanted to touch on, and I just see this spark in Cherie when you talk about this, but we haven't really talked about the support, like Chloe, of course, but then you've got Cherie as your wife in the background, who I think has it on your vision board at home that you want to achieve this goal. And I mean, for you, Andy, how important is it to have someone who's willing to race to the servo and get 4 bags of ice, or put a Gatorade or Powerade out on the letterbox, to sort of be happy when you get home after going out for golf or for a training run? But, how important is that for you, I guess, in this journey, or, in life in general, I guess?
Yeah, it was essential, and thank you.
Thank you for asking that.
Probably don't thank you. I definitely don't thank you enough for that, because that was critical for me being able to get to any version of the start line, I think, and I couldn't have done it without my cheer squad. So thank you.
Thank you.
It was I do remember a couple of those days. Like you kind of helped me be a little bit more engaged when I think I was starting to maybe plateau a little bit, and I could in the lead up to the marathon, I could kind of increase my intensity to kind of do a couple of things. You'd be like, look, it's been a couple of days since you've gone to the gym or whatever. I could see you doing your exercises every night, but that was another thing, like on the roller every night or on the Theragun every single night. And doing that is one of the other things you kind of have to do. But I remember you were always really good, Shez, in gently nudging me to go and do those things.
Do the right things.
Yeah, do the right things. And it was no small part with your nudging along the way.
It's not nagging, it's nudging. I like the nudging. I like that.
Sometimes with a kick, a kick in the backside, and then sometimes kind of with a gentle knock at the door. But you definitely helped me, so thank you.
Oh, that's really nice. Thank you. Yeah, I remember I kept saying to you, are you going to commit? Are you going to commit in the early? And you weren't having a bar of it from me. Like I was really encouraging you to just, when are you going to commit? When's the date? But then once you had committed, I'm like, okay, well, it's part of my job now. Like to make sure that on those down days or those slower days, just to give the nudge or the kick or the reminder and not, I was really conscious, and I think it's so important. I haven't always been good at this, but I would say in this time is never to complain. I think if you are supporting someone, it's so important not to be like, oh, you're going for another run? Oh, this is so hard for me, not to turn anything, because it is a lot of time commitment, the physio, the gym, the running, all of the things. So, yeah, I think that's so important. If you're in for it, you've got to not be complaining or be anything but a big support.
Yeah, and I think it's anything like your husband, your partner sets a goal. You should be in it together, right? You've talked about it before, you've committed to it, and you can't just be there for the race.
Yes.
Because that's the easy bit, right? Like it's easy to turn up for the race and be all cheer squad and Instagram on the day, but it's harder when it's like you're going to be out for 4 hours on a Sunday and I'm here with the kids on my, that sort of thing. That's a lot harder to commit to. And I don't think a lot of people realise that, you know, behind the scenes side of things. And it is much easier to come home to someone who's not gone, oh, you've been out for this long. You know, how was your run? You know, was it good? Don't have to tell me all the splits. Mike always, you know, says to me, like, we don't need to run through all the splits, Ali. It's okay. I'll run you through it anyway. But, you know, like, I think it's just, having that support is immense, I think, and just not feeling like you're coming home to something where you've got that friction or whatever because you've been out doing something that you want to do and that you're supporting each other in it. So
thank you. Thanks for saying that.
you.
So can we talk about the big day then?
Yes,
Are we at the big day now?
I think we might be.
So let's talk about it. So Sunny Coast Marathon.
Sunny Coast, 11th of August it was, so about a month ago. Big day came. Pretty nervous the day before. Very nervous and.
Did you carb up? Did you?
Yeah. I shout out to a couple of people actually. Henry as well. He's like, no new things on race week. So whatever you're doing leading up to the race itself, no new things, no new shirts, no new pants, no new underwear,
no new nipple covers.
No new nipple covers, no new creams, no new
gels,
nutrition, no new anything. Like just everything you're kind of familiar with. And saw another beautiful friend of ours, Rachel, who up the coast, like
Run
saw
Club
her
for Mums.
Run Club for Mums, like the day before. She's like, "Oh, I see you on the hydrolytes." I'm like, "No." Like, what do you mean? She's like, "Oh, take a tube of hydrolyte, you know, basically the day before, just in your water bottle, like at different times." Oh, okay. So I did that, and then
she asked you how many gels. You'd had the gels, and you knew the brand that worked well with you. She how many gels have you got? I think you said 2, and she just looked at you horrified, as Ali just did that too. She's like,
I should have been texting you now. I'm like, I should have been.
Where was my coach when I needed one?
I really let you down on the 2 gels. I'm so glad you ran into Rachel.
Yes.
Well,
and so
I'd only ever done one run before and had a gel. And so it was kind of like leading up to the big day and all of my thousands of kilometres. No, I think I worked out I did 386 kilometres kind of leading up to it from when I committed to actually getting to the start line. And only one other time had I taken a gel, and that was about a week before, and it felt okay in my body. Yep. So it was like, okay, well, I guess I could do 2.
But we did go to the little shop when Rach kind of gave us that look. So we walked
5
up to the start line the day before.
Yeah.
And there was a running store across the road from the start line, and they had gels, and he said, "Oh, we've only got X amount left," and it was the brand you had, and it was meant to be. So I think you went with 5 or 6.
4.
Oh, okay. Well, more than 2.
4, yeah. 1 for 10, 1 for 20, 1 for 30, 1 for 35.
There were some pretty spectacular T-shirts. Team Andy, Chloe and I.
Nice.
You know, when you talk about getting ready for start day.
We'll maybe put a photo up of those as well.
We did have a new sign. Chloe, it was a big cardboard one. Chloe design, it said, "Dad, you're my hero," or "You're my hero," just "You're my hero." So whenever other people saw it, they all smiled. "You're my hero," and then we had Team Andy shirts on as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was a bit of fun. But yeah, the hard work wasn't us putting the T-shirts on. It was you. It was you. I was excited. We stayed at Mooloolaba, and so I guess the Alex Headland being the beginning of the marathon, you come down the hill, for those who are familiar. About 2 Ks is where our hotel was down the hill, and we decided we'd stay there. It was nice mapping it out. Okay, where are we going to see you? 2 Ks, and then you go around Brisbane Road and come back, so we'd see you again at 7. So when Nipplegate happened, it was actually perfect.
Perfect timing.
Because we were there at 2. That was really interesting from the non-runner observation. When you guys talk about the ego and people coming down the hill and they're 2 Ks in. So I guess you're maybe just starting to find some kind of rhythm. And you had the pacers, which I only learned what they are, the people with the balloons saying how long, if you stick with me, this is how long the run will take.
Me too. I didn't even know they were a thing. Like I turn up to the start line and there's people with balloons and I'm like,
what are they
doing? Is it your birthday?
Why does it say
happy birthday?
Yeah, why does it say 5 on there? Okay,
3, 5,
right, I'll
whatever.
come hang out with you then.
Yeah. But seeing it was fascinating seeing people come down the hill with all this. It was like a sprint. And I am definitely no expert here, but
you're going, that's a bit hard at the 2K
You look
mark.
like you're going hard at 2Ks. Good luck. And there were 1 or 2 at the very front. You go, well, this is just what they do.
Yeah,
but that bulk in the middle, you're like,
yeah,
we'll see you.
We might see you going out the reverse
We'll see how
window.
this goes.
Yes.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, it kind of was interesting. So like I guess the plan for the day, it was so strange. Sort of you walk up there, it's kind of pitch black. I'm wearing, barely a singlet and shorts.
Did you sleep the night before? Just before?
Ish.
Yeah.
Kind of like down at about 10. I think I woke up at 3 and I'm like, is it time yet? And
then
by sort of 4:30 I got up or 4 I got up and did some stretching on the roller, had some avocado on toast, and then had a banana on the way there. Good nutrition. It was my third time taking nutrition before any run. So did that and then kind of, sort of made my way up there in the dark, and it wasn't too cold, so just normal singlet was fine. And
your little LSKD running gear.
Yeah, the running gear.
I've switched on to LSKD too. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, they got some good stuff. And then it was it's just sort of weird, kind of watching the way everyone prepares. Like everyone prepares differently. Like there are people with so much nervous energy, they're literally doing sprints. Like they're at the start line, they're getting all of it out. And I'm like, well, for those who are wearing the red bibs, like you got 42.2 Ks, I'm sure it's plenty of time to kind of get out whatever energy you've got. And so for me, up to that point, I kind of been, for the running nerds out there, I'd sort of been running like 6-minute Ks for the 20K runs. That's kind of where I was about. And I kind of broken 25 minutes for 5Ks and I was stoked with that. I broken 55 minutes for 10Ks. I was stoked with that. And that was about the peak of where I was getting to. And so for the big day itself, 6-minute Ks weren't sustainable. I didn't feel like.
For the 42.
The 42. So I felt like if I could be at 7-minute Ks, then I felt like that was pretty doable. And it was more just a heart rate thing. So I noticed and this is the rabbit hole you go down again, ignorance is bliss, in the first block. And then as you begin to learn more about your body and how it responds to exercise over a long period of time, then you begin to kind of learn what feedback it gives you along the way and see above those goals, like finish and don't die. And so it's sort of like, okay, well, how am I going to finish and how am I not going to die? So, and then I kind of like 7-minute Ks would do it. I felt like I could kind of keep my heart rate in the sort of zone 2, zone 3, zone 4 category. And then probably for the last hour or so, I feel like I'd be
up there
in that max heart rate kind of area. And then I've never been there for an hour before, so I didn't know what was going to happen. But that was the plan, 7-minute Ks. So
we even mapped it out, didn't we? We got that map, and I mentioned about the 2Ks and then the 7 as you loop back. But then you gave me
like a approximate time splits of where I'll
back
be.
Up to Alex, where then you'd hit that at 21K. So be here around this time. Maybe this was more for my benefit because I'm not very good with time. But so then this would also be the goal. You'd be back at 31Ks and then you'd be back for the 42, which was awesome because I think then you'd message me and I'd track you on my watch and, okay, where is he? I can see you now at the other end of the half marathon came in and you guys were a bit slower than some of those half marathon runners because obviously they're almost in a sprint. So it was really cool just to kind of map out your goal of when you'd cross and come through each time.
I think it was about that 5K mark that I noticed you'd organised. It was so lovely. Thank you. Some going back to Nipplegate, some nipple covers. So up to that point on the bigger runs, I tried.
You just swindle that shit.
Oh gosh!
I tried some kind of like the anti-chafing cream on the nipples, but it's no good with those running singlets. Like the material is so light, it's like it's almost like a tiny sandpaper, and it just chafes. It's no good. It's not much fun. And I tried the cream and it like it just sweats off. It's no good. And then I literally just put on strapping tape like that I had for my Achilles. And that stuff's pretty strong. And it turns out when you've got a hairy chest, like it just goes on and it doesn't come off very easily. So I would literally just whack a big thing kind of on those previously.
Yeah, at 7Ks, you text me and knowing that
you got these like nice little flowery looking ones from Kmart that the ladies have for their
actual nipple covers for women under their clothes. I'm like, try these, and you put them on the night before, and they lasted through. You're like, yep, these are really stuck. These are good. And after you hit your 2Ks passing us, I got a message saying, these aren't going to work. I'm like, oh no. And so luckily, because we were right underneath the hotel, I said to Chloe, right, we've got a task. Let's run up. We've got to support Dad. Go and cut up. We went and cut up the strapping tape. And then when you came through at 7, here I had like the 2 pieces ready to go, and you just kind of like pulled your shirt up, ripped those other things off, like smacked them on your chest. I'm like, all right, go well, babe.
This is like a pit stop for nipples, right?
It really was a pit stop.
Not what
for
I
nipples.
expected. And that's when you would have heard from us. Yep, okay, just got the new nipple tape, Ali.
Pit stop for nipples. It was kind of, I was grateful for
made me
that.
laugh.
Thank you. And little things are not to be underestimated, because they, over a long period of time, that was like a pebble in your shoe. Like it will grate on you, and you kind of need a lot of things moving in your
right
favour.
direction,
on the day. So that's kind of Nipplegate in a nutshell. And I broke the no new things rule. Like
I was going to say, if you listen to Henry, you probably wouldn't have nipple
no,
gate.
I would have just had my old fashioned strapping tape, and then
you would have been
I
good to
figured when
roll.
I'm ripping out those hairs kind of from the roots afterwards, then that'll be the least of my worries.
Yeah, true.
And so I saw you at 7Ks for Nipplegate, and then saw you again at 21, and at that point, I'm feeling good. Like on the day, I got headphones in. I decided to listen to podcasts for 3.5 for the first 3.5 hours.
Yeah,
that was
lined up the podcast you wanted to
yeah,
listen
because
to.
I noticed when I listen to music, like I get kind of excited and I want to run faster.
Too fast, yeah.
Yeah, and that wasn't the goal. So I listened to a podcast. One of them was just hilarious. Like I laughed for the first hour, and I figured, oh, how cool is this? I'm going for a run. I'm kind
Such
of
a beautiful spot.
Yeah,
like,
beautiful spot. I'm alongside
and you don't
the
have
beach.
to put Powerades out. It's all catered. It's all there. Like it's just
that was honestly the best thing. Like
you do. You get to a race and you're like, wow, it's all laid out.
The people are giving me water and electrolytes every 2 kilometers. Like
and they're cheering for me.
And they're cheering
I'm
for
a
me.
rock star.
And like it's like, oh my God, how easy is this? Like how could I possibly fuck this up? Like it's kind of everyone can do this. This is easy.
That's awesome.
Which is sort of a lot of fun. So
But you did keep consistent to your pace. Like I look at your splits, and I have to tell you, after 14 marathons, I've only ever done, I think, 1 or 2 negative splits. But Andy, you did one in your first marathon.
What's a negative split?
So a negative split is where the first half of your marathon is slower than the second. Sorry, is slower than the second half of your marathon.
So his second half was faster.
Faster than his first half. So when I looked at the splits, I thought, geez, natural marathon runner here. He's already doing things that I sometimes struggle to do because of ego, because of, all that sort of stuff. So you did stick true to that for sure.
Yeah,
That's
cool.
cool.
I don't really know what to.
That.
Yeah, I don't. I
You're like,
I don't
me.
really. Well, yeah,
Own
like I mean, 7-minute Ks, like, and then I was feeling good, so I thought I'd go faster. But I noticed as my body was working hard, I was sweating more, having more water, more electrolytes, and as those things were happening, like your heart rate just naturally increases. The day gets warmer, your body works harder, and it was just sort of entering that threshold of probably those last 20 Ks that, to be honest, up until the day of the marathon, I'd never run further than 21 Ks, and I'd only ever done that twice. And one of them was in March on that infamous kind of I need a Powerade or I feel like I'm going to die day. and then the other one was like even maybe 2 months before. And so going to the day, like anything from 21.3 Ks onwards was just totally unknown territory.
Yeah.
And so I kind of got to the 21, saw you guys. I remember seeing it at about that point of the race. I'd seen it a couple of times. It was a sign of someone being a little bit ironic of something that they put on a sign. And it said, like, remember, you paid for this. Like, you for those that don't know, you pay about $200 to go to the start line of a marathon in order to get, like, a little paper bib that you have Bobby nappy pins, to your singlet on. Like, you actually pay for this. And I remember seeing that, and I'm kind of like, oh, you'll never run a fucking marathon with that kind of attitude. But then the more I kind of thought about it, I was like, oh, I did pay for this. I'm getting my money's worth. How good's this? What a privilege. I get to pay for this.
Yes.
How good.
Yes.
And so I think that helped kind of flip the psychology for me on that. And then, so listen to my first podcast, got to the second podcast, super boring. I thought it was going to be really inspiring. It was about like a boxer turned UFC fighter who kind of left Africa, border crossings all the way to Europe to get his start because he just wanted to be a UFC fighter. Like, incredibly inspiring. But it was kind of windy out and the headphones and the wind aren't great. then I couldn't really, and he had quite a strong accent, so I couldn't really understand what he was saying. So I think there was a good 90 minutes there where I was sort of just tuning out a little bit. And then what I noticed was that I remember I started to feel like a little funny, I think at about 24 Ks. It was my right knee started to feel a bit weird. And I was like, oh, well, it is what it is. Like this is a new pain, but that's okay. It's not unusual to have pain, but it's new. And I remember another piece of advice I've been kind of given along the way was like count up, not down. So at that point, it was a little too early to begin counting down from 42.2 Ks to being like, oh, only 18 Ks to go.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of like, okay, well, I'll just keep going. And 24, 25, 26. And by that stage, I'm running past people who are like just on the course, like who are going into their final section, you know, and I'm like, oh, okay, that'll be me in 2 hours. And I'll just keep going. And then I think by the time I got to 30 Ks, then I started to, I think what I then changed from the podcast had finished, and then I'd changed to the playlist.
Did you see Cherie at this point?
Yeah, we started at 21 and then the 31. I remember texting you.
I remember getting a message and I was like, he's going to do it now.
Yeah.
We won't spoil the party yet.
Yeah,
but yes,
I remember at that part, I think at 21, sending you a message and you're like, he's looking good. He's looking good. And I'm going to say this with so much love, quite surprised. Because I really, at that 21 and then as you loop back for 31, by then all the half marathon runners had all finished. And so you're seeing how exhausted people were at half marathon. Like some people were in their, living their best life, but there are a lot of people like limping over the line, really struggling. And I just kept thinking, oh God, am I going to have to carry you home for the 2Ks down the hill? Like, that's fine. Do I need to go and get the car? Is he going to be able to even walk? Like, I was genuinely thought you would just be, carrying yourself over the line. And when I saw you at 21 and then that 31, the most memorable part of it for me, one, you just seemed to have great energy, but you were just smiling. You were having so much fun. And I thought, oh, all right, you're in a good place. You were so happy. It was
fun. To be honest, the whole day was kind of fun. Like it's weird and sadistic to sort of say that for someone who maybe hasn't been through the whole thing before, but it felt like fun. It felt like the realization of a goal. It felt like I was gonna achieve it, but not in a, of course I'm going to do this sort of ego inflated way, but in just like a knowing or a realization that there was a celebration.
Yeah, 100%. That's the day to celebrate.
Yeah, the whole thing felt like that. So I'm like, how cool is this? I get to go for a run, sun's out, guns out, like just dad bods out, really kind of going for it, and the sun's shining and the beach is there and it's kind of coolish weather and people give me water every 2Ks. Like, how good's this? And I just get to go for a run and listen to whatever I want to listen to. Like, it's just amazing. And so I think by the time I got to, I think 30 Ks, I remember hearing like 30 Ks or 31 Ks go off in my ears. And then I changed to the music playlist. And then I remember like, just all my favorite tracks come on, carefully curated, really planned, like all my favorite stuff.
You're saying you didn't listen to me on the podcast the whole way, just my voice?
I didn't, babe, no, but it was...
That must have been the one I left at home.
Yeah, whoops. But no, it was very, very grateful to see you guys because I think it also just provides a bit of a reality check.
Such a nice lift, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. We kind of, I saw you at 2, 7, 21,
Chloe held your hand and
or
we
whatever.
ran. I say we ran with you. We shuffled with you for about 200 meters.
Every day I was shuffling. Like that's what it's so funny when like I feel like when I run, I'm running really fast, and then you have someone kind of run past you, and they look like they're barely moving, and it's like, oh my God, what am I doing if they're just doing that? But
and that definitely wasn't aimed at you. That was more about our ability to run. But I think the two together,
the two are mutually exclusive.
Yeah,
definitely.
we shuffled along.
And then,
how was Chloe like throughout? Was she just pumped the whole time? Was she just like, Daddy's doing it? Like, what was her energy like throughout?
Yeah, she was. I think a little bit impatient for him to come back around.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, when's Dad here? Yeah. Like, come on, click this over.
It was great. Our friend Rach did the half. So we saw Auntie Rach cross the line, and come through. And so celebrating with her. And then, she was just so excited. And I think just telling everyone, my dad's running a marathon when everyone was getting their medals, like, oh, Dad's going to get one of those. And, yeah, it was really exciting.
Very cute.
Yeah, it kind of got to that last 10Ks, and I think at that point, so over the last 12 or 13Ks, I began to visualise what 12 or 13Ks looks like around Morningside or Bulimba, where I just spend all my time running, basically. And then when I could see that, then it became it started to become a little bit more real. Like, I wouldn't say I really got carried away by it, but it was more, I could see like, oh, that's the service station I'm running past. There's my Powerade over there.
Yes.
Like, there's the fish factory I'm running past. There's that's the place where I dodged a semi-trailer crossing the road. That's the like Helene's French Bakery, you know, that I go to get a baguette. Like, that's that place. Oh, there's the Italian restaurant on the corner. Like, and I think those cues along the way with, like, when I'm counting up through like 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, they're the ones that are just sort of like, yeah, okay, cool. Well, you can then visualize what that distance is. Like, it's really, I find it quite challenging to sit here and visualize what 42.2 kilometers looks like if you just laid it out in a straight line. Like, that's basically running from where I am right now halfway down the Gold Coast. And
Exactly.
when you think about that, like, it's like, why would
Cherie's like,
I just had a little bit of a shudder.
It's like,
oh, why?
you could have got cars for that.
Totally. We know LSKD is 37 Ks from here, so you need to run another 5 Ks from there.
Oh my
Like,
goodness.
it's things like that where you think
guys are
about that.
crazy.
Yeah, you think about that in a straight line, it's ridiculous. But I think when you break it down into kind of manageable bite sizes, then you don't get too carried away with whatever it is you're trying to chew on. And then that sort of helps to then, for me, when I was thinking about that, like, I was just like, okay, well, I'll just be in the K you're in. Shout out to Matt McGreedy, that was his one.
Yeah.
Be in the K you're in, count up, not down. And yours was like, can you find the next aid station? Like, just make it to the next aid
Chunk
station.
it down, yeah.
But I ran the whole way, with the exception of 2 aid stations that I just walked through because it's kind of awkward trying to run and throw water down your throat. And I just did that the whole way. And
did you have any mental battles at the back end of the marathon, or did you use these things, like you said, the laying out, is that what you did to overcome that? Were you going through some, you know, the knee hurts, this hurts, I just need to get to the next aid station, did you need to get to that place, or did you feel like you were going to do it and you had that laid out? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, did you have that real struggle, or did you I'm trying to understand, did it really dig to that level that you wanted it to, in the sense that you had to overcome a mental battle with yourself, or wasn't it, was it to that point? Does that make sense? Like,
it does.
yeah.
It does. And the answer is no.
Yeah,
I
right.
felt like the runs that I did around here, when you're dodging trucks,
You've
and you're
done the
running
mental battle here.
You've done the mental battle.
Gotcha.
When you're running on uneven roads and uneven footpaths and jumping in front of trucks and trying
doing
to
it with
find
no nutrition.
no nutrition,
and all
trying to
that
find a
sort of
water
stuff.
bubbler. Like,
Yeah,
I think I'd probably felt so horrible in my body and my mind through the entire process leading up that, to be honest, at no stage on the day, other than the knee
had a good
giving
day.
me, I
Yeah.
had a good day, than the knee providing a slight amount of discomfort. Did I feel like that? And it was about when I got to 39 Ks, I remember starting to feel, I remember getting quite emotional, and I remember thinking, like, I'm going to fucking do this.
It's awesome.
And it's cool. And at that point I had a couple of voices in my head like, are you really going to do that marathon? Like, are you really going to do the marathon? A few voices along the way. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to fucking do it. I'm going to cross that line. I'm going to raise those arms. And this is a kind of a great moment for me.
This is the Andy that finishes stuff, that he commits to, that he starts, that he finishes, and he sees it through. And it's setbacks, but it's made you a different human almost. Like, that sounds a bit, bold, but in a way you do finish stuff, and you finish things that only 1% of people have done. Like, it's a big thing, right? It's
Yeah.
So
Yeah, thank you. It definitely feels like that. But then I also remember kind of at that 39K mark, I was feeling great. So I'm definitely going to up my pace now. So then that's when I sort of started running, maybe just do the quick mental arithmetic, but maybe 10% faster. And but then I kind of go past some paramedics working on a runner on the road. And
I want to
then
be that guy.
Yeah. And then there's a good and then I look down on my watch and it says 178 beats a minute, and I know that like my maximum heart rate based on my age and then working backwards is 181 beats a minute. So I know at that point I'm like, I've been going for 4.5 hours and I'm 3 beats a minute away from what max looks like. I'm not tasting lead in my mouth at that point, and I felt pretty good. But I thought I'd better back off a little bit, because at the end of the day, the medal looks the same whether it's 4 hours 45 or 4 hours 50. Like it looks the same whether it's 3 hours or 5 hours. It's really the same thing. And so then for me, it's kind of like, okay, we'll go back to those goals. What are they? They're like this. And then I've got 3Ks to go. That means I'm running up York Street. I'm running up Barton Street. I'm running up there, and then I just have to go through the park and then up Passion Street, and then I'm home, and then I'm there. And so then when I round the turn, and then you kind of hear the cheers and you know, everyone's cheering, and then.
So what was that like, the finish line feeling? What was did it feel just a big fuck you to those guys that said, or was it like a moment of happiness, you know, like it just really.
I think it's self-satisfaction at that point. It was like the fuck you had kind of happened in the 6 months leading up. And as well to the little voices inside my head as well. And then the people along the way who, you know, kind of, are you really going to run that? Really? You? Like going to run that marathon? So they, it's like those voices had been silenced. And then at that point, it was just like, it was almost like an inner self-confidence to being like, yeah, okay, you've met your edge with this. And you've kind of sought out darkness to an extent, and light has shined on the darkness, and you've met your edge.
That's awesome.
And so now it's just kind of like, when I see the medal now, and I've got it in my bag here over there, and it's when I see the medal now, and it usually hangs on the edge of Chloe's A-frame bed.
Oh,
Then I just see that, and then there's like a part of me which just sort of sits there and just kind of nods my head a little bit, like with the right amount of ego attached to it, to know that this like
pride.
represents. While this represents something that I achieved on the day, I think by far this represents kind of character that I built along the way.
100%.
And then that'll stand me well for the future or wherever life ends up going. So
congratulations, Andy.
Thank you. Thank
so
you.
amazing.
Yeah.
And I literally couldn't have done it without you two ladies. So thank you so much.
I feel immensely proud. Yeah. I just think you set a goal, you went after it, you had the setbacks, and you got to that finish line. And yeah, I think a lot of people will be inspired because you have run, and you talked about your running journey, but you really, you lead up. You're not the classic runner. You're not, you're talking about inefficiencies, those sort of things. And I think people set audacious goals, but I think just going about it, having that burning desire and just chunking it away, you really, you got there in the end, but it wasn't without its setbacks. And I think that's inspirational for people, everyday people, to achieve their goals too. So yeah, hats off, Andy. It's awesome.
Thank you.
So
Yeah, I think it kind of probably made me rethink what a goal looks like, and goals are important sometimes for them to be time bound. That's just the nature of them. But it's more important, I think, to holistically look at kind of like what a goal is. And if you look at it like a marathon, it's sort of pass or fail, right? You either do or you don't.
Yep.
But the goal is to finish the marathon. And while I wanted to do the Brisbane one, that wasn't possible. And so then it's just sort of acknowledging that and being like, okay, cool, how is this going to happen? And in the back of my mind, I'm like, if all else fails, then I'll get 12 Powerade bottles and I'll put them at different stages in the park, and I'll just run around the park 43 times.
Yeah.
And then that's another way to do it. I'll run around this neighbourhood 4 times. Like there's plenty of different ways to achieve the goal. And if there's a time that's anchored to it and things don't quite work out, then that's okay. But it's important to know that it doesn't need to feel like failure. It just needs to be, it's a part of the journey along the way. It just needs to be kind of recommitting to whatever that ultimate anchor point is. And sometimes it's buried and decorated in things that are like, oh, it has to be this in this box at this time. But maybe it doesn't.
100% doesn't.
Maybe it could be more than that. Maybe there's learnings. So.
And I think, you hear of that with Olympians and all that sort of stuff where they, fall short or don't qualify or miss a gold medal, and then there's just always so many setbacks along the way that people don't see or don't realise, you know, injuries and all that sort of stuff. And I think, you know, not everyone's an Olympian, but your everyday people, I think we shouldn't be afraid to set something big, go after it, and have a potential failure or whatever that looks like, a setback, because it really is just that stepping stone to the next, you know, sometimes you just have to keep doing the reps, right?
Yeah.
And eventually you'll get there. So
It's so incredible. I just think you're so sexy.
Guys, do you want me to leave now?
Yeah, could you? I'm just sitting here. The camera's on you, but Ali keeps glancing over at me because I think I'm just staring at you so lovingly and with so much admiration for what you've done. And I saw it all. I saw the highs and the lows and lots of tears and doubt, and to see you cross that finish line, and for us to cheer you crossing that finish line was incredible. It's interesting we talked about not dying, but that was a genuine fear of mine, not to go that far, but that you would
hurt yourself,
you would hurt
physically.
yourself, or like your heart would, you'd try and push. You were so dedicated and you were so determined to cross that line. I remember actually saying to you, please don't cross that line at any cost. Like, if you don't cross the line, I know you will, but just don't do it at any cost. Like, you've got to be okay. There was just something in the back of me thinking you were so locked in on this, like, just don't kill yourself doing it, literally. And then a few Ks out, I remember I'd been tracking you the whole way, and all of a sudden you stopped moving on my watch, and my heart just dropped because I thought, oh no, we'd seen you at the 20, we'd seen you at the 30, you were looking so good, and so many people had said to us, you know, marathons, 2 marathons, it's like until 37 Ks and then it's the last 5 or what have you. And I thought, oh no, he's pushed too hard. Like, what's happening? And I was trying to message you. I wasn't getting a response. And I was getting really quite anxious at that moment. And then I think you popped back up on the tracker and whatever, and you said, oh, you know, I'm 7 minutes away. And even now telling you, it's like, oh my gosh, like all the emotion was so overwhelming. And I'm saying to Chloe, he's coming, Chloe. And Chloe and I like kind of pushed into the front line to make sure that we were right there. And we were cheering for anyone who went past, all their names on their bibs, like we were calling out their names. And there you were, and you throw your hands, you had your hands up above your head, and you're like, woo woo on the video. And oh, it was just the greatest.
I think if you
moment.
ever lose faith in humanity, you just need to go to a marathon or an event like that. You just see the
everyone's
people
cheering on complete strangers.
And there's struggle and there's battle and there's all that sort of stuff. And
people carrying other people
and disabled people who are phenomenal. Like, you know, we find it hard to do it able-bodied, but then there's people with, you know, ailments that you couldn't even imagine who are crossing the finish line. And it's just crazy to even think about it. But
it's just giving me goosebumps because it just is proof of, if that's your goal, whether it's running a marathon, whether it's standing on a stage speaking, whether it's writing a book, it doesn't matter what the goal is. But when you have a goal and you are locked in and there's a why behind it, that anything's possible. You just got to put it out there. And seeing that in that running capacity is just so many people, you know, going, this is my goal, whether it's their first marathon, their 14th marathon. People just putting it out there and going hard, and that group celebration, that collaborative support and celebration, it makes me think, oh, when's the next one? We'll just go and cheer people on. That was amazing.
So when is the next one, Andy? Or what is next?
What's next, Andy?
I'm not fully formed on an idea.
Oh, shocker.
I'm coming for another meeting and we're going to commit.
A little bit. I'm not fully formed on another idea.
What's getting floated around right now?
Oh, there's so probably 2 things. One of them is I'd like to do Everest Base Camp.
Cool.
And because I feel like that's a good mental test, and like it's a bit of a physical test, but the altitude thing is probably more mental to a certain extent. And so I'd like to find my edge doing that, and I think it'd be a pretty fucking cool walk.
It'd be amazing, yes.
So I'd like to do that. But I need to find someone to do it with, because I kind of don't want to.
Kara's husband, Josh.
A shout out to Josh. He's been on the podcast. He's done it twice now.
He's done it twice now. Yeah, I feel like that's something that, unlike the marathon, where doing it myself, like it's quite a solo thing, where Everest, I feel like I'd want to do it with someone. It's a special experience. I think I'd like to run an ultra. actually. That feels like when the marathon finished, I was like, oh, I feel like I could keep going. I was feeling like a bit of a sicko, and then we had
and
to
I
walk.
love this. You've never done even a half marathon.
I know.
No.
So
It's
you
like,
just
can I just do the 100 and whatever it
No,
is?
we just like, like we then had to walk 2Ks back over the hill after when you finished, got my medal, kind of hobbling up the hill and got a few toenails on the way out and grabbed some ice from Coles and then went upstairs and sat in a bath for 10 minutes with some ice and felt remarkably better. So, I like the idea of an ultra. I think I don't know much like the marathon. I'm like, do I just go for a run in the bush? Like, is that kind of the thing? But I think there's a bit more to it, and you need a bit of a team, and there's different things
checkpoints
to it.
along the way.
Checkpoints along the way, different kinds of nutrition, and you're looking at. My friend Henry said like 27 hours is generally the cutoff for 100 miles, and so then it's which is a combination of walking and hobbling, and trying to work backwards from there to then know at different stages you just like it's a whole different type of frontier, I guess. So and that probably based on what I know about the marathon, I'm like, that sounds interesting. Now with the ultra, I'm a little bit like, that sounds interesting. I think I'd like to go and explore that. So it might be
nervous.
it might be
You
something.
might have to have it in a really cool location
Yes,
because if
that's
it's
hard.
27 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough scene for 7-year-old
Yeah.
and 40-something-year-old. Yeah.
Everest, so I wouldn't mind. I haven't been to that country. We're
Amazing.
trying to get more countries in, so
Yes.
Yeah.
time will tell.
So yeah, that'll be what's next. There's something else I'm working on too that kind of came to me the other night, but I'm not ready to say it out loud yet.
Okay,
Are
cool.
you sure?
So yep,
Oh.
very sure.
Shows
Came
doesn't
to
even
me-
know about
it
this.
came to
shit.
me the other night, and I'm like, oh, that's the thing, because
Have you
sometimes
dreamed about it once, twice, or 3 times?
it's been something that's kind of knocked on my door for many, many, many years, and I just always find a reason to kind of archive it. And it is something that comes back, and I know that it's.
Should I
that
know
it-
about this?
I know that it feels like I know for me that it resonates, and it feels like something when I move to emotion because of it. And then I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's the thing that I've got to go and look at. I just don't know what a goal looks like around it, and because I don't know what a goal looks like around it, I don't want to put words to it just yet.
Okay.
So I kind of just want to marinate on it.
Well,
a
it's
little
just
bit
very
more.
cryptic.
Yeah.
that.
You and I
Yeah.
speak about this off air.
Yeah, totally. I want to learn to play guitar. That's
that
what it
it?
is. Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
But I don't know how to kind of put that into a goal other than because playing a
Oh, that's
guitar
so
is
cool.
a thing, and maybe it's a song or in a time, but it comes up for me. It came up probably 5 years
This
ago.
is the voice.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was watching T Swift the other night actually, in our dance party on Sunday afternoon on Father's Day. But yeah, guitar is it. That was the thing the other night. I'm like, oh, that's it. That's what I've got to do.
I feel like I can exhale now. I was getting
Oh, yeah,
really
I
nervous
know.
what you're
So
going
what
on
are
about. I'm
you-
like, oh, guitar, yeah, I'm here.
Maybe,
Okay, yeah.
maybe the Ultras and Everest
Sure.
would be kind of easy, just like shooting fish in a barrel, and the guitar's like, fuck, really. But anyway, that's what I want to do. I want to learn guitar, but I just need to articulate a goal around it, and then it could be a very interesting podcast again in 12 months' time. I find it. I don't know if you play guitar, but you're welcome to come back and
Thanks.
ask me what that's like.
I'm a piano player, but thank you.
Oh, very
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Ah,
The things you
there
learn.
you go. Maybe that's where I got to start. Anyway, yeah. So that's it.
Oh,
Oh, thank you. Well done, Andy.
amazing, Andy. I'm so super proud of you, and thanks for having me along to chat about it. I really, super pumped.
And Ali, I can't express on behalf of us, but even just from myself, how much influence you've had on this whole journey. And you literally were the first person I was messaging after, he's coming and, this is what he's done. And you were there with us, the whole nipples and all. So no, but really from that podcast when you initially when you came on, and then that meeting where you made the commitment to Ali, and the whole journey. So thanks. It just felt so right for this conversation to happen together.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for your
Cheers.
support.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Lead with Courage podcast. We illuminate leadership, and it's our mission to inspire and grow the leaders of today to create a better tomorrow. We hope and trust that this episode has given you some insights and joy to empower you to live your biggest, best life. If you did enjoy the episode, we'd be so grateful for you to rate and share wherever you listen to this podcast. And until next time, go and lead with courage.